The recalled Japanese ambassador to Seoul will return, but the dispute over the decades-old wartime sexual slavery issue is unlikely to be completely resolved anytime soon. Fueling the anger on the Korean side is the Japanese government's attitude that there is nothing more to discuss. So we thought we'd hear from people in Japan who beg to differ with their government stance. Our Soo-young files this report from Tokyo.
Marking the decades-long cries for recognition, reparation and healing. The Statue of Peace outside the Japanese embassy in Seoul represents the women and girls forced into sexual slavery by Japan in the early 20th century. The statue has inspired similar models around the world, but its meaning is lost on many Japanese.
I haven't learned much about it, but I've heard about it on TV.
I remember hearing about it briefly at high school, but they don't teach it these days. I think that's wrong.
It's not in the curriculum. I haven't been taught about it. I think we need to learn more about history to move past conflict.
Based on our interviews, it seems the average Japanese person isn't well aware of the facts or controversies surrounding Japan's wartime sexual enslavement of women. While here in the country's capital, there are a number of people working to change that.
Tucked away in a room at a small publishing house in Tokyo, a young girl waits to see daylight. Yuka Okamoto, a writer and publisher, was entrusted with a duplicate of the Statue of Peace by the sculptors of the original.
It's been 2 years, but we haven't found a place for her. We're worried the conservatives will clamp down on us.
Moved by a victim's testimony in 1991, Okamoto joined efforts to raise awareness of the sexual slavery issue in Japan.
Because the issue has been erased from most school textbooks, young people don't know about it, and the Japanese media pumps out biased reports that stir up distrust and the misconception that the statue is anti-Japanese.
She digs for historical evidence and resources and publishes the findings through printed and online contents. By building a better understanding among the Japanese public, she hopes someday the girl in her back room can sit in the sun.
The offender has no right to tell the victims to remove the statue. If anything, Japan is more in need of it, so it never forgets the past.
Preserving memories before they are forgotten. A museum in Tokyo holds records from 9 countries where women were forced into so-called comfort stations.
Tokyo denies evidence that women were forced into sex slavery, claiming the issue was settled with the countries. So we collect official documents, journal entries, and personal testaments for our database available for anyone to access.
Under pressure and even threats from right-wing groups, the activists here believe that as Japanese citizens, it is their duty to ensure that history does not repeat itself.
It's a human rights issue, a case of gender-based violence, which applies today in war zones all over the world. We must not forget the terrible acts of our ancestors to warn the world against it.
However, they are in a race against time to collect more evidence and testimonies, as many victims and witnesses have already passed away, and the traces of the events continue to be erased from Japan's history textbooks. Yang Jinja, a Korean-Japanese translator, sometimes wonders if she's fighting a losing battle. For more than 20 years, she's led a civic group that calls for Tokyo to fully acknowledge its past atrocities.
이것은 군의 일기. 일본 군인들이 점령지에서 너무나 강간을 하기 때문에 될수록 빨리 성적 위안 시설을 갖춰야 된다. 이렇게 여기에 쓰여 있어요.
Along with other evidence, Yang turned the records over to Japanese authorities in 2014.
이거에 대한 그런 답변은 아직 1년 후에 그냥 이 자료를 돌려드리겠습니다.
What keeps Yang going is the enduring spirit of the Korean victims.
대법원에서
When Granny Song Shin-do, a victim, lost her 10-year-long court case against the Japanese authorities, our team wept and wept. But do you know what she said? She said, "I'm okay. My heart is still unbroken. The Japanese government may be unmoved, But we have seen the victims come out of their shells and transform over the years. And that changed us, seeing their humanity and goodness despite everything. We must pass their message to the next generation.
Mireille Yamagata, an actress and dancer in her 30s, speaks to her generation. She first encountered the sex slavery issue when she was cast to play a Korean victim in the early days of her career.
I kind of wondered how to get into that mentality of a woman who underwent that terrible experience. But also I felt a strong responsibility as a Japanese woman to play the role of a Korean culture.
Years later, after visiting a residence for the victims in Korea, she was inspired to create her own solo piece, which she performed in Korea, Japan and Taiwan.
The moment they were put in these comfort stations, their life could not go back to normal. I wanted to make the piece as a sort of requiem for them, to soothe their souls, give them a place where they could live the life that they couldn't have.
Beyond political and cultural differences, Yamagata hopes to inspire humanity.
We need to look at this issue as a big mistake that was made just by mankind. I think it's very important that, at least in school, people get taught more about it, to understand the psychology or the situation of why these events occurred, what's going to prevent that from happening again.
Settling the past does not mean to forget, and apologies mean nothing without an admission of wrongdoing. It's by no means a political agenda. It's a human issue that weighs heavy on the conscience of those who choose to ignore it. Soo-young, Arirang News, Tokyo.